The cold metal of the railing bit into my palms. Below me, the River Seine was a ribbon of black silk, embroidered with the shimmering gold lights of Paris. A boat drifted by, music and laughter spilling into the night air. Sounds from another world. My world had gone silent. All I could feel was the weight of the ring on my finger. 6 years. It felt heavier than 6 years. It felt like a lifetime of waiting. I remembered Robert's voice, warm and convincing. Just a month ago. Haven't you always dreamed of going to Paris? Mandy. He'd taken my hand, his thumb tracing circles over my knuckles. This time, I'll go with you. I promise. A promise. Like so many others, it had dissolved into thin air. I looked down at the simple gold band on my finger. On our wedding day, he'd slid it on and whispered, "Forever, but forever." It turned out, had an expiration date. I unclenched my fist, my fingers stiff and cold. For a moment, the ring caught the light of a distant street lamp. A final, tiny spark. Then, I opened my hand and let it fall. It made no sound as it hit the water, swallowed by the darkness. A part of me expected to feel a great sense of loss, a wrenching pain. Instead, a strange, quiet calm washed over me. It was the feeling of letting go of something you'd been clutching for too long. But that was the end. The beginning started a week ago. In the sterile, bustling chaos of Chicago O'Hare International Airport, the excitement was a hummingbird in my chest. For weeks, it had been all I could think about. Paris, our 6th anniversary, a chance to finally mend the cracks that had been spreading through our marriage like a spiderweb. I had planned everything. I'd spent hours researching boutique hotels in Montmartre, hidden bistros with checkered tablecloths, and the best times to visit the Louvre to avoid the crowds. I imagined us walking hand in hand along the Seine, sharing a croissant, his arm wrapped around me as we watched the Eiffel Tower sparkle to life. I believed this trip could save us. I believed it could remind him of the girl he'd fallen in love with, the artist who saw beauty everywhere, before she became just his wife. I checked my watch for the 10th time. Our flight was boarding in less than an hour. Robert was 45 minutes late. I tried calling him again, but it went straight to voicemail, just like the last 3 times. "Hey, you've reached Robert. Leave a message." His voice was crisp, professional, the same one he used with his clients. A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. He knew how much this meant to me. He had promised. I scrolled through our text messages, rereading his last one from this morning. "See you at the airport. Love. Can't wait." The words seemed to mock me now. I sat on our oversized suitcases, the ones we'd bought together for a honeymoon we never took because of his work, and felt a familiar sting of disappointment. It was a feeling I had grown used to, a dull ache that lived just beneath the surface of my smile. Finally, my phone buzzed. His name flashed on the screen, and for a second, relief flooded through me. He was here. He was just stuck in traffic. I swiped open the message. "Amanda, there's an urgent matter at the company. You go by yourself." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just one short, cold sentence. It wasn't a message from a husband to his wife. It was a command from a boss to a subordinate. It was the kind of text you send to cancel a casual dinner, not to abandon your wife before a trip meant to celebrate 6 years of a life you promised to share. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, waiting for a follow-up message. "I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you." Something critical came up, but nothing came. Only the disembodied voice of the airport announcer echoing through the hall, calling for final boarding. The sound vibrated through the floor, up my legs, and settled in my chest. A heavy, hollow emptiness. People bustled around me, a river of happy families and excited couples, and I had never felt more alone. Just last month, he'd held my hand, his eyes lighting up with a spark I hadn't seen in years. "This time I'll go with you, Amanda. I promise." I had believed him. I let myself believe that the man I married was still in there somewhere, buried under the stress of his job and the ever-present shadow of his bestie, Chloe. Chloe. Her name was a bitter taste in my mouth. She was his colleague, his confidant, the one he spent late nights at the office with, the one whose calls he always took, even in the middle of our dinners. "We're just friends, Mandy," he'd say, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes whenever I brought it up. "We grew up together. You're being insecure." He had a way of turning my valid hurt into a personal flaw, and for years, I had let him. I had silenced the screaming voice inside me that said this wasn't right. I had chosen to trust him, to believe in the sanctity of our vows. Tears pricked at my eyes, hot and sharp, but I refused to let them fall. I would not cry in the middle of an airport. I stood up, my legs shaky, and dragged my 2 large suitcases toward the gate. I didn't know what I was doing. Part of me wanted to turn around, call an Uber, and go back to our silent, empty house. But another part of me, a small, defiant spark I thought had died long ago, pushed me forward. I had dreamed of Paris my entire life. I had given up a scholarship to the Paris Art Academy to stay with him, to build a life with him. He had taken my dream and dangled it in front of me, only to snatch it away at the last second. I wouldn't let him take Paris from me. 2. The flight was a blur of recycled air and the low hum of the engines. I sat by the window, staring out at the endless black sky, the pinpricks of stars looking as distant and cold as my husband's message. The seat next to me was empty, a gaping void where he should have been. I thought about the first time he told me he loved me. We were in college, sitting under a large oak tree on the campus lawn. He had been sketching in his notebook, and I was painting the sunset. He looked at me, his gaze so intense it made my heart stop. "You're my future, Amanda," he had said. "Everything I do, it's for us." Where was that man now? Had he ever really existed? Or had I just painted him in colors I wanted to see? The plane touched down at Charles de Gaulle Airport just after midnight. The exhaustion was a heavy blanket, but sleep felt impossible. After clearing customs, I sat in the sterile waiting area, the air thick with the smell of coffee and a language I barely understood. To kill time, I opened Instagram. My feed was a collage of happy moments, friends' babies, vacation photos, engagement announcements, a world away from my own reality. And then I saw it, a new post from Chloe. My finger froze over the screen. The photo was simple, artistic, just 2 hands, tightly clasped against the clean, white sheets of what looked like a hotel bed. A woman's hand, with perfectly manicured nails, and a man's hand, a strong, familiar hand. On his ring finger, a familiar glittering band, my wedding ring, the one I had placed on his finger 6 years ago. My voice trembling with love and hope. The caption was a single, devastating sentence. "Is this what being loved feels like?" The air left my lungs in a silent rush. The ground didn't just feel unsteady. It felt like it had completely collapsed beneath me, dropping me into a black, soundless void. This was the urgent matter at the company. This was his emergency. It wasn't a spreadsheet or a client meeting. It was her. It had always been her. Every late night at the office, every canceled dinner, every time he'd chosen her distress over my happiness. The pieces clicked into place, forming a picture so ugly and sharp it physically hurt to look at. The lie wasn't just about this trip. The lie was our entire marriage. A wave of nausea rolled over me. I thought I would scream. I thought I would shatter into a million pieces right there on the cold airport floor. But I didn't. Something else happened. A strange, icy calm settled over the storm in my heart. The hummingbird of excitement was gone, replaced by a cold, hard stone. The tears that had threatened to fall earlier simply evaporated. My finger, steady now, moved across the screen. I tapped on the comment box. My mind was empty, my emotions numb, but my fingers knew what to do. "You do look so happy. Congratulations." I hit send. Then, and only then, did the dam break. But I still couldn't bring myself to make a scene. I found a deserted corner of the airport, my shoulders shaking with silent, racking sobs. The betrayal was a physical pain, a knife twisting in my gut. I finally pulled out my phone and called him. I needed to hear him say it. I needed the final, brutal confirmation. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy, as if I'd woken him up. "Amanda, you landed. Where are you?" "Robert?" I asked, my own voice sounding foreign, brittle. There was a pause. I heard a faint rustling, then Chloe's sleepy voice in the background. "Rob, who is it?" My heart stopped. He didn't even try to hide it. "It's Amanda," he said, his voice lowering. Then, back to me, his tone shifting, becoming annoyed. "What's wrong?" "It's the middle of the night. I saw Chloe's post," I said, the words tasting like ash. Silence. A long, damning silence. Finally, he sighed. A heavy, put-upon sigh. The sigh he always used when I was being difficult. "Can you stop making a scene?" His voice was steady, emotionless, as if he were reading a work report. "How many times do I have to tell you? Chloe and I are just friends. She just broke up with her boyfriend. She was a mess." I was comforting her. The excuse was so flimsy, so insulting. It was almost laughable. The lie was so blatant. He didn't even care if I believed it. He expected me to just accept it, to go back to being the understanding, compliant wife. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to hurl every ounce of my pain and rage through the phone. But I didn't. I just took a deep, shuddering breath, and I hung up. I let the silence speak for me. I turned off my phone, hailed a taxi, and gave the driver the address of the hotel I had so carefully chosen for us. As the car sped through the sleeping streets of Paris, the city lights blurring through my tears, I made a new promise. Not to him, but to myself. He had abandoned me in the city of my dreams. Fine. Then I would learn to dream a new dream, one that didn't include him at all. The next day, I walked through Montmartre. The smell of freshly baked croissants hung in the air, a sweet perfume that couldn't quite mask the bitterness in my soul. I found a small restaurant, the kind with tables spilling out onto the cobbled street. I sat alone, watching the world go by, feeling like a ghost. That's where I met Julien. He was a waiter, with a warm, easy smile and eyes as blue as the Seine in the morning sun. He noticed me struggling with the French menu. My high school classes a distant, fuzzy memory. "May I help you, mademoiselle?" he asked, his English accented but clear. I looked up, startled. "Oh, yes, please." He recommended the croque monsieur and a coffee, and when he brought it, he lingered for a moment. "You are here on holiday?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, alone." The word felt strange on my tongue. "Paris is a beautiful city to explore alone," he said kindly. "You can discover its secrets." An idea, bold and reckless, sparked in my mind. "Are you a student?" I asked. He nodded. "Art history, at the Sorbonne." It felt like a sign. "I'm an artist," I heard myself say. "I need a guide, someone to show me the real Paris, the artist's Paris. Not just the tourist traps." I looked at him directly. "I will pay you, of course, for 1,000 euros. Would you be my guide for the next week?" He looked surprised, a slow smile spreading across his face. He seemed to understand, in that moment, that this was about more than just seeing the sights. It was about reclaiming something. "For 1,000 euros, he said, his blue eyes twinkling. "I will show you a Paris you will never forget." True to his word, Julien showed me a Paris I would never have found on my own. He didn't take me to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Instead, he led me to a quiet park in the 7th arrondissement where you could see it perfectly framed by the branches of old chestnut trees. He skipped the main halls of the Louvre and instead guided me through the quieter wings, pointing out the brushstrokes on a forgotten Dutch masterpiece, his voice full of a passion for art that I recognized because it was once my own. He led me through cobbled streets where painters still set up their easels, the air smelling of turpentine and rain. He took me to a tiny bookstore where the owner, an old man with glasses perched on his nose, slept in a chair surrounded by towers of books. With every step, I felt a part of my old self waking up. The artist, the dreamer, the girl who saw the world not just as it was, but as it could be. Julian didn't flirt with me. He talked to me. He asked me about my art, my inspirations, what I used to love to paint. He listened, truly listened, in a way Robert hadn't in years. Robert saw my art as a hobby, a quaint little pastime. Julian saw it as my soul. He took countless photos of me, not posed, smiling for the camera shots, but candid moments, me, lost in thought before a Monet, my face tilted up to catch the sunlight filtering through the glass ceiling of the Musée d'Orsay, my fingers tracing the spine of an old book. In his pictures, I didn't look like a heartbroken wife. I looked like a woman discovering herself. I looked happy. On the last day of my trip, we sat at a cafe by the Seine. The morning sun was warm on my skin, and the coffee was strong and perfect. We were raising our cups in a silent toast to the city, to our brief and unexpected friendship. He took one last photo of me, a genuine smile on my face, the river shimmering behind me. Later that afternoon, I posted it. Just one picture, the one of me smiling, holding the coffee cup, the sunlight in my hair. The caption was short and simple. By the Seine. Nothing better. I didn't do it to make Robert jealous. I did it for me. It was a declaration, a quiet statement that my happiness was no longer dependent on him. Less than 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Robert. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. My heart is steady, calm rhythm in my chest. Hello. Who is that man? His first words weren't, "Are you okay?" or "I miss you." They were sharp, cold, an accusation. I took a slow sip of my water. What man? The one in the picture. Who is he? His voice was tight with an emotion I couldn't quite place. It wasn't just anger. It was fear. "I'm not good at French," I said calmly, the lie coming easily. "He's the guide I hired in Paris." There was a pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, trying to find a new angle of attack. Then, his second question burst out, more urgent, almost panicked. "Where's the wedding ring on your hand?" Ah, there it was. Not my safety, not my feelings, but the symbol of his ownership. I could hear the tension in his voice, a raw, possessive edge I once would have mistaken for passion, the kind of emotion I once longed for him to show me. But now, it meant nothing. 6 years together, and Robert had never once imagined a world where I would leave him. He assumed I would always be there, his loyal, forgiving wife, waiting for him to come home. Every time I had tried to talk, to save our marriage, he would dodge, deflect, or shut down communication, as if my concerns were an annoyance. For years, it had been the same cycle, but he didn't know that in 10 days, I had lived a lifetime. He didn't know that the Amanda he was speaking to was not the same one he had left standing alone at the airport. If this had been before, hearing that desperate tone in his voice would have thrilled me. I would have felt a surge of victory, a sign that he still cared. But now, I felt nothing but a profound, weary sadness. I gave him the answer I had prepared. The ring. I think I probably dropped it when I was feeding the pigeons by the river. Silence on the other end of the line. Long and suffocating. It was the sound of his world tilting off its axis. Then, Robert's voice dropped, all the anger gone, replaced by a strained, controlled tone. "Tomorrow, I'll be at the airport to pick you up." I only said one word. "Okay." Then I hung up and turned off my phone. I took another sip of coffee, my eyes following the river where a flock of pigeons lifted into the sky, their wings beating against the air. Free. The plane landed at O'Hare at 7 p.m. The next evening, the jet lag was a dull throb behind my eyes. I was wearing a simple dress and low heels, dragging to large suitcases that now felt heavier with the weight of unspoken things. Robert had booked the ticket. He knew exactly what time I would arrive. I stood by the curb at the arrivals terminal, watching car after car pull up, collect their loved ones, and drive away. The sky turned from dusty blue to inky black. 8 p.m. came and went. Then 8:30. There was still no sign of him. My phone stayed silent. No messages. No calls. The old, familiar feeling of being abandoned began to creep back in. A dull knife twisting in my chest. He said he would be here. He had promised. Again. I didn't wait any longer. I called an Uber. The night wind was cold, and I shivered in my thin dress for nearly 30 minutes before a car finally came. On the way home, the city lights streaked past the window, but they held none of the magic of Paris. They just looked tired. Dragging my luggage up the path to our building felt like a Herculean task. I was breathless, sweat soaking through the back of my shirt. By the time I got to our apartment door, the clock had struck 11. My body was exhausted, but my mind was strangely, unnervingly alert. The elevator doors opened. As I stepped in, my heel caught in the gap between the car and the floor. A sharp, searing pain shot from my ankle all the way up my leg. I cried out, stumbling against the wall, and at that exact moment, along with the throbbing ache in my foot, came the soft chime of a text message. It was from Leila, my best friend from college. She had moved to Paris 5 years ago to pursue her career as a gallery curator. What are you still hesitating for? Paris is your dream. The Paris Art Academy will help you shine. I stared at the screen, my finger frozen, my breathing slow and shallow. Leila knew. She knew about the scholarship I had won, and the bright future I had given up to stay with Robert. A second message appeared. It's just 2 years. I'm waiting for you. 2 years. It wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. I had been with Robert for 6 years, from my freshman year of college, through 4 years of dating and 2 years of marriage. He had been the sun round which my entire world revolved. At our graduation, the art department held an exhibition called Future. My friends painted grand ambitions becoming famous artists, traveling the world. I had painted a simple portrait of myself and Robert, hand in hand, smiling. For 6 years, he was the only future I had ever dreamed of. But he couldn't even be bothered to show up and bring me home, just as he'd promised. How ridiculous. The pain in my ankle flared like a lit match. I ignored it. My thumb moved over the screen. I typed back to Leila, "Wait for me. I'll come to Paris." Back in the apartment, I took a long, hot shower, the warmth soothing the bone-deep cold that still clung to my skin. I opened my laptop and registered for the study abroad exam, which was being held next month. Then, I picked up the French textbook from the shelf. I had bought it when we first started planning the Paris trip. Robert had laughed and called it a pointless thing. He spoke French well enough for travel, he'd said. I had given up halfway through, frustrated by the difficult grammar. But that night, I read until the words blurred, each one like a stone paving a new road ahead of me. My head was heavy with fatigue. I finally fell asleep at the desk, my cheek resting on the open book. Amanda, Amanda. Robert's voice pulled me from a dream. I opened my eyes, blinking against the pale light of the desk lamp. He was standing there, the smell of alcohol hanging heavy in the air. His eyes were bloodshot. I rubbed my eyes, my own voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You're back. It's late. Go to bed," I said. Standing up, I started walking toward the bedroom without looking back. "Amanda." He hesitated, his brow furrowed as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I guessed he was waiting for me to ask why he hadn't picked me up, who he was drinking with, what Chloe really was to him. The old me would have. I would have screamed, cried, exploded in a storm of hurt and anger. But the new me only felt a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. "Amanda, when did you get back? Why didn't you pick up my calls?" he asked, irritation finally creeping into his voice. I glanced at my phone. Several missed calls from him, all around 1 a.m. when I had been buried in my French book, my phone on silent. "Chloe just broke up," he went on, his tone sounding practiced, like he was justifying himself. "She's struggling. So I went to comfort her. Okay. I cut him off shortly. Heading to the bedroom again. He grabbed my arm. His grip tight. Amanda, don't be mad. There's really nothing between us. Robert, I'm not mad. I looked straight into his eyes, my voice empty of emotion, even though my heart was pounding. It's late. I'm tired. You should sleep. Too. I shifted my arm, signaling for him to let go. Amanda, can you stop making a scene? He didn't let go. His tone grew sharp, his eyes flashing with annoyance. I yawned. A genuine, soul-deep yawn. What's the matter? I'm sleepy. We'll talk tomorrow. He stared at me, his lips moving as if to argue. But nothing came out. He was looking for a fight, and I was refusing to give him one. After a long moment, his face grew tense. Finally, he let go of my arm. I turned my back and walked straight into the bedroom without looking back. Slam. Just as I lay down, I heard the front door close behind him, hard and deliberate. It was a sound meant to punish me, to let me know how angry he was. But I didn't care. I pulled the covers up, closed my eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, I slept better than ever. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains, shining on the dining table. Robert had already laid out breakfast, sandwiches with the crusts cut off, just how I used to like them, and a pot of freshly brewed coffee, its fragrant steam curling into the air. He was trying, but it felt like a stranger's attempt, a gesture learned from a movie about what a husband should do. Beside my plate was a small, velvet ring box. It was a deep blue, delicate and glittering under the morning light. He stood by the table, his shirt neatly pressed, the familiar smile back on his face. But now, it felt strangely distant, like a mask he had put on. 6 happy years. Amanda, he said softly, his voice trying for a warmth that couldn't quite reach. He gestured vaguely towards the kitchen. The day you left for France, I got the news Chloe had just broken up. She needed me. Last night, she had another breakdown. So before he could finish the rehearsed apology, I gave a faint smile, my eyes brushing over the perfectly arranged breakfast. It's fine. Let's eat. I pulled out a chair and sat down. I picked up a sandwich and took a bite, chewing quickly, mechanically, as if the simple act of eating was the only thing keeping my composure intact. Robert opened the box. Inside was a new pair of rings, platinum, inlaid with tiny diamonds. They were shiny, expensive, and cold. He held them up, looking at me, his eyes deep, but also probing, searching for a reaction. Amanda, since the rings are gone, let's replace them with new ones. I remembered our wedding day. The original rings were simple gold bands we'd picked out together at a small, family-owned jewelry store. When he slipped the ring onto my finger, my voice had trembled. Robert, this ring, I'll never take it off for the rest of my life. I had hugged him so tightly, tears of pure, undiluted happiness flowing down my cheeks. But now, I only paused for a few seconds. I smiled, a small, polite curve of my lips, and took the ring from him. Thank you, Robert. I set it down on the table beside my plate, and kept eating as if it were nothing more than an ordinary gift, like a scarf or a bottle of perfume. He hesitated, his gaze searching my face, his voice lowering. Amanda, are you still mad? I stopped chewing. I looked at him, and the faint smile on my face faded, my tone growing serious, but not angry. What would I be mad about? You and Chloe are best friends. You see her as a sister. Helping her is the right thing to do. The words were calm, reasonable. They were the words he had always wanted me to say. But hearing them now, spoken without a trace of sarcasm or hurt, seemed to unnerve him more than any fight ever could. His eyes flickered. His expression grew complicated, his gaze shifting from me to the new ring lying alone on the table. Then you, he faltered, unsure what to ask next. I calmly looked out the window at the city waking up below, then blinked and smiled lightly. Oh, I'll wear it now. I picked up the ring and slid it onto my finger. It felt loose, slipping slightly. I had lost weight. He hadn't noticed. Seeing me wear it, Robert finally seemed to relax. A genuine smile touched his face, as if a crisis had been averted, as if everything was back where it should be. "Amanda, come with me tonight," he said, his voice confident again. "To my parents' house for dinner." Hearing that, I lifted my head and stared straight at him. My heart gave a painful jolt, a muscle memory of a past desire. 3 years ago, the first time I met Robert's parents, I had nervously prepared gifts for a week, carefully choosing each item. I wanted so badly for them to like me. But when I walked into their house, the first thing I saw was Chloe, sitting on the sofa, chatting and laughing with his mother as if she were the daughter-in-law. Robert's father was showing her a photo album. "What's so funny?" Robert had laughed as he walked in, leaving me standing at the door. Chloe tilted her head, teasing, "Just talking about how silly you were as a kid." I had stood in the doorway, clutching the gift bags, feeling awkward and embarrassed, a complete outsider in my own life. After that, Robert always made excuses. He never brought me to see his parents again. I faintly sensed they didn't like me, that in their eyes, I could never compare to the girl who had grown up alongside their son. Back then, Robert's invitation would have made me so happy I could barely speak. I would have rushed to prepare, to dress up, desperate for a second chance to be welcomed. But now, I only shook my head lightly. "Not tonight. I'm busy." He frowned, surprised. "Work at the company?" I didn't mention the study abroad exam. I just nodded, letting him assume it was overtime. "I can wait for you after work. We can go later," he said, his tone patient, but I heard the hint of pressure underneath. He wasn't used to me saying no. "No need," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "Another time." I wiped my mouth with a napkin, stood up, and walked into the bedroom. My laptop, French books, application documents. I checked each one, arranging them neatly in my bag. I was building my escape, brick by brick. Robert stood in the doorway, his voice cooling. "Fine. Then I'll ask Chloe to come with me." It was an old tactic, a threat meant to trigger my jealousy, to make me backtrack and agree to his plans. I didn't lift my head from my bag. My hands were still busy. His footsteps echoed, heavy on the hardwood floor, then stopped. He was waiting for me to react, to get jealous, to storm out, to pull him back. But I did nothing. I just kept packing my things, because of the plan to study abroad. I went to the company to submit my resignation. Lisa, my boss, was a sharp, kind woman in her 40s who had always been my mentor. She looked at my resignation letter, then up at me, a knowing look in her eyes. "This is a good thing, Amanda," she said, her smile warm. "But you'll need to finish handing over your work before you leave. It will take a few weeks." She stood up. "Come on, let me take you out for a farewell lunch." I nodded, feeling light, though a bit wistful. I had liked my job. I was good at it, but it was part of a life I was leaving behind. We stepped into a small French restaurant, the air carrying the scent of wine and freshly baked bread. While we waited for our food, I scrolled through my phone out of habit. My finger froze at Chloe's new social media post. The photo was a selfie. Chloe, sitting between Robert's parents at a dinner table that was not our own. All three of them were smiling brightly, like a perfect family. And Robert was there too, his arm draped casually over the back of his mother's chair. The caption read, "Family so happy," and right below it, a single, familiar like. It was Robert's account, an account that was mostly dormant. He never posted anything, never liked my photos, but he always liked Chloe's, especially after we'd had a fight. It was his silent, passive-aggressive way of provoking me, of showing me that my anger meant nothing. But this time, I didn't get angry. My heart didn't even flutter. My finger moved lightly over the screen and pressed the like button. Then I locked my phone and put it down. Lisa brought me to this French place on purpose. I realized as she gestured to the menu. "Try the coq au vin." It's their specialty. I tasted it. The rich flavor melted on my tongue, and I nodded. It's delicious. So, Lisa said, raising an eyebrow, a teasing glint in her eye. Now that you're a free woman, almost, how about we go to a proper bar later this week? Celebrate your resignation. Out late. Aren't you afraid Robert will be jealous? She added, testing the waters. I shook my head, my voice as light as air. Then I just won't go back. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room. Lisa and I had talked for hours over cocktails, and it was too late to go home. My head was a little fuzzy, but my mind was clear. My phone lit up with a few unread messages from Robert, all sent after midnight. Why is your phone off? Where are you? It's so late. Why haven't you come back? I stared at the screen, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. These were the exact same messages I used to send him. My thumbs flying across the screen, my heart pounding with worry, with anger, with a desperate, foolish hope. Every time Chloe had called him away from our home, he would turn off his phone, shutting me out of his world completely. Now, the roles were reversed. I only replied with one line. Work is busy these days. I won't be home for a while. A moment later, his reply came. A short, clipped word. Okay. He was trying to sound nonchalant, but I could read the frustration between the letters. He had lost control, and he didn't know how to get it back. For the next few days, I threw myself into preparing for the study abroad exam, staying late at the office to finish my handover, and sleeping at the hotel. I never went back home, and today, I decided to take a break. I stood in the middle of an art exhibition hall, the soft gallery light shining on the paintings. I was working on some assignments for the upcoming course, sketching the lines and shadows of other artists' work, feeling the old fire rekindle inside me. My phone buzzed. A message from Robert. What time do you finish? I'll come pick you up. I thought for a moment. I couldn't avoid him forever. The divorce papers were being drawn up by my lawyer, but I hadn't served them yet. It was better to face him. I sent him my location, agreeing to let him come. At 5 in the afternoon, I stepped out of the exhibition building. My dress fluttered lightly in the wind, my low heels tapping softly against the pavement. Robert's black car was parked by the road. The window was rolled down, and his brows were furrowed. Did your company move? He asked as I approached. I shook my head, my voice calm. No. I went to see an exhibition before. I had asked him dozens of times to go to galleries with me, hoping to share the one part of my soul that was still mine. But he was always busy, always called away by Chloe because she was having a hard time. Every time I got sad about it, he just shrugged. Chloe needs me. Can't you be more understanding? You can go by yourself. I really don't get those paintings anyway. He never knew. He never once understood that every time I asked him to go, it was because one of my own pieces was being exhibited in a local showcase. It was me, wanting to share my joy, my achievements, with him. After enough rejections, I stopped asking. I walked to the passenger seat, my hand reaching for the car door. Amanda, Robert called out. He paused, his gaze flicking to the large, modern exhibition building, his voice hesitant. How about we go in and take a look? I froze, my hand hovering over the cool metal of the car door handle. The request was so unexpected, so out of character, that for a moment I was speechless. He wanted to go to an art gallery? With me, the man who once called museums big, quiet rooms full of dust. I looked back at him. He was watching me, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. It was a calculated move. I knew, a grand gesture to prove he was changing, that he was willing to take an interest in my world. A year ago, this would have made my heart soar. Now, it just felt too late. I shook my head, managing a faint smile. I've already seen it. Let's go. Before I could get in the car, he was out of his seat and walking toward me, his face darkening with frustration. It was the look he got when things weren't going his way. Why not? You don't want to go. he asked, his voice tinged with the familiar irritation I knew so well. He was framing my refusal as a rejection of him, not the activity. I held his gaze, my own smile not wavering. My calmness was my new armor. I've already seen it. Robert, let's go. He reached out and took my hand, his grip surprisingly tight. His expression was complicated now, mixed with a rare, fleeting hint of guilt. But I've never been. I want to see it for once. I felt a flicker of surprise at the raw plea in his voice. He was trying, in his own clumsy, controlling way. Perhaps I owed him this one last chance to see if there was anything left to salvage. Perhaps I owed it to myself, to know for certain that I was making the right choice. All right, I said, my voice soft. Let's go. Inside the vast exhibition hall, the air was still and cool. Soft light from unseen sources bathed the paintings in a gentle glow, making the colors seem to breathe. Robert and I walked side by side, but the silence between us felt wider and more cavernous than the room itself. He was clearly uncomfortable, his hands shoved in his pockets, his gaze darting around as if looking for an escape route. He stopped in front of a large, abstract canvas, a chaotic explosion of reds and blacks. He hesitated, then turned to me. Amanda, what style is this? I looked up, a little surprised. He rarely asked about art, about the things I loved, even my graduation piece, Future, the painting of him and me hand in hand. He had glanced at only once before declaring it nice and helping me lock it away in storage. This one is Surrealism, by the French artist Marcel Chevalier. I began to answer evenly, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet space. It's meant to explore the subconscious. Before I could finish, his phone rang. The sharp, jarring sound of his business ringtone cut through the serene atmosphere. He pulled it from his pocket. The screen lit up, the caller's name clear even from where I stood. Chloe. I looked at him, and he looked at the screen. A muscle twitched in his jaw. For a moment, I thought he might actually ignore it. He pressed the side button, silencing the call and slipping the phone back into his pocket. He turned his attention back to the painting, his shoulders rigid, as if to prove he was here, with me, fully present. But seconds later, the ringtone sliced through the air again, sharp, insistent, demanding. Chloe wasn't one to be ignored. He pulled the phone out again, his finger hesitating over the screen. His eyes flicked toward me, a silent, panicked apology in them. I gave a faint smile. I reached over, my fingers brushing his as I took the phone from his hand. Before he could react, I pressed the green accept icon and tapped the speakerphone button. Chloe's voice filled the space between us, weak, pitiful, and utterly theatrical. It was a performance I had heard too many times before. Rob, I'm not feeling well. I'm at the hospital. Can you come with me? I looked up at Robert. His brows were knit together, his lips parted in a silent protest. He looked trapped. Then, he spoke, his voice curt, directed at the phone. I'll send my assistant to pick you up. On the other end, Chloe's voice immediately grew frantic, laced with the sound of manufactured sobs. Rob, I need to talk. I need you. Can you please just come? His face stiffened. His eyes wavered, darting between the phone in my hand and my face, as if he were standing at a crossroads. But I knew he had already chosen his path. He always did. Just like always, the moment Chloe called, he would drop everything, her plans, my feelings, our entire life together, to run to her side. Whenever I protested, his patience would snap. We grew up together. What's wrong with me taking care of her? Can't you be more understanding? Stop making trouble. Once, after a huge fight about her, I had packed a bag and left, staying with my sister for a month. He never called. He never texted. In the end, I was the one who came back, swallowing my pride, lowering myself to find him again. I had taught him that I would always be there, no matter what. It's fine. Go, I said calmly. I handed the phone back to him and turned to leave. Robert hurried forward, catching my hand. "I'll take you back first." I shook my head, pulling my hand gently from his grasp. The faint smile was back on my lips. "It's fine. I'll stop by the supermarket next door for a few things anyway." He froze, surprise and hesitation warring in his eyes. He expected a fight. He was prepared for tears and accusations. My quiet acceptance was throwing him off balance. He lowered his voice. "Then, I'll come home right after. We'll have dinner together." I nodded, my expression unreadable. "All right, I'll go shop first." As I walked away, his voice followed me, softer now, tinged with that same guilt I'd heard earlier. "Amanda, I'm sorry." I didn't turn back. I just kept walking, my steps feeling light, as if I had just shaken off an invisible chain that had been wrapped around me for 6 long years. At 7 p.m., I was in the kitchen. The rich, savory smell of seared foie gras mixed with the earthy aroma of rosemary from the beef stew, simmering on the stove. I had looked up a few French recipes online, determined to master them. I was carefully preparing a full 3-course meal, a crisp Nicoise salad, the foie gras, and the buff bourguignon. It felt like a ritual, a quiet ceremony for myself. Robert still hadn't come home. The old me would have been pacing the floor, my stomach in knots. I would have been checking my phone every 30 seconds, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. But tonight, I simply finished cooking, set a single place at the table with our best china and silverware, and sat down to enjoy the meal alone. The foie gras was a little overdone, but the beef stew was perfect, the meat tender and the sauce warm and rich. By 8 p.m., I had finished eating. I washed the dishes, cleaned the table, and picked up my French book. After an hour of studying, my eyes grew tired. I idly scrolled through social media. Usually, after Chloe called Robert away, she would post something subtle but triumphant, a picture of their clasped hands, a shot of his favorite coffee from a late-night diner, a selfie where you could just see the sleeve of his coat in the background. It was her way of marking her territory. But tonight, strangely, there was nothing. Her accounts were silent. By 10 p.m., the portion of food I had left out for Robert had gone cold. I stared at the congealed soup and the drying piece of meat for a long moment. Then, without a second thought, I scraped it all into the trash. I opened my laptop and read through the materials on the Paris Art Academy's curriculum, taking careful notes in my journal, each line like a stone paving the way forward. When I was done, I picked a French film on Netflix, watching it with subtitles, repeating the lines aloud to practice my pronunciation. The drifting, melodic voices of the characters filled the silence of the apartment. As I finally turned off the screen to go to sleep, a realization hit me. Not once that entire evening had I truly thought about Robert, pouring myself into the things I loved. It turned out, was a complete and fulfilling act in itself. The next morning, Robert still hadn't come home. A message from Lisa lit up my phone. "Come finalize the handover at work today. It's your last day." I replied, "Okay," and rushed out the door, a strange sense of finality and freedom washing over me. In the afternoon, while I was buried in a stack of documents, my phone buzzed. It was Robert. "Why didn't you answer my texts?" he asked, his voice urgent and strained. I glanced at the screen. I saw a few messages he had sent earlier that morning, during a handover meeting with my team. I hadn't even noticed them. I was busy with work. "What is it?" I replied, my fingers still tapping on the keyboard, my tone flat and businesslike. He went silent for a moment. Then, the inevitable excuse. "Last night, Chloe had another breakdown. I was afraid she'd be alone. So won." I gave a small, humorless laugh. "You don't need to explain." He fell silent again. The silence was so long this time that I could hear the faint static of his breathing. Through the line, "Amanda," he finally asked, doubt heavy in his voice, as if he were hoping for a different answer. "Are you really not mad?" He wanted me to scream. He wanted me to get jealous. He wanted me to be the predictable Amanda he had always known. But I only said, "Yeah, what's there to be mad about?" Right across the table, Lisa, who could hear my side of the conversation, gave me a subtle wink. I nodded at her, then continued into the phone. "Robert, is there anything else?" "I'm busy." He seemed to rally himself, his voice becoming determined. "I'll come pick you up tonight. Let's take a walk." The words "take a walk" made me pause. In 6 years, we had barely gone on dates, much less spontaneous walks under the night sky. But I remembered, with a sudden, sharp clarity, all the times Chloe had called him, distraught about something, and he had told me he was taking her for a long walk through the city to help her clear her head. They would be gone for hours, laughing and talking. I had once said to him, my voice bitter with unshed tears, "I'm stressed, too. I want to walk with you, talk with you." He had only rubbed his forehead, his face a mask of exasperation. "If you're stressed, go out with your colleagues. I need my own space, too." Now, I realized he was right. I did need my own space. "No need. I'm going to a bar with my co-workers tonight," I said. "It's a farewell party for me." His tone dropped instantly. "You're going to drink." I remembered last year when Chloe had called him to her place to drink because she was upset. I had waited up all night, only to see her post at dawn, "He's so cute when he's drunk." In the photo, Robert's face was flushed, his head leaning against her shoulder, his eyes glazed and unfocused. The next day, when I confronted him with it, he had just shrugged. "I was drunk. Nothing happened. Drinking with a friend isn't a big deal." If he thought leaning on another woman while drunk was normal, then so was this. "Of course," I replied lightly. "Going to a bar means drinking." He was silent for a long, tense moment. Finally, he said, his voice tight, "Fine. Just don't get too drunk." That night, my co-workers threw me a huge farewell party. The bar was glowing with neon lights, the music pounding with a bass that seemed to vibrate away every worry. We danced until we were breathless and laughed until our sides hurt. It was past midnight, and the group, still buzzing with energy, suggested we go somewhere else for a final round. I laughed and nodded, feeling freer and lighter than I had in years. Then I heard Lisa call out, "Amanda, isn't that Robert over there?" Following her gaze, I saw him. He was standing by his black car, parked across the street. The pale gold of the streetlight cast his tired face in sharp relief. My co-workers started teasing me. "Wow, we've only heard Amanda talk about him. He really is handsome." Another one chimed in, "Come on, let's not get in the way of the couple's late-night rendezvous." The old me would have blushed, proud to have my friends see my handsome, successful husband waiting for me. But now, I only felt a sense of awkwardness, a feeling of being watched. My steps slowed. The group said their goodbyes and dispersed into the night, leaving me alone on the sidewalk. I walked toward him. "Are you drunk?" Robert asked as I got closer. His voice was soft, and he reached out to steady me, his hand closing around my arm. I shook my head, and with the easy confidence of the alcohol, I gently brushed his hand away. I opened the car door myself and sat down in the passenger seat. He got in the driver's side, his grip tightening on the steering wheel, a flicker of disappointment on his face. He started the car and we drove in silence for a few minutes. Then, he spoke, his voice quiet and strained. "Do you remember what today is?" I froze. I thought for a moment, my mind slightly foggy from the drinks. I only recalled that today was my official last day at work. Then his voice, thick with emotion, broke the silence. "Today is my birthday." I feigned a moment of surprised realization, letting the alcohol serve as a convenient mask. My eyes went wide, my expression shifting to one of exaggerated, dreamy regret. "Oh, Robert, I'm so sorry. I drank too much. I completely forgot." The truth was, I hadn't forgotten. How could I? His birthday was etched into my memory by the scar tissue of last year's humiliation. I had planned a surprise party for him, booking his favorite restaurant, filling the private room with flowers and balloons. I baked a cake myself, carefully piping an icing drawing of the two of us on top. A callback to our college days. I invited all our closest friends, the ones who had witnessed our love story from the beginning. We set the time for 8 p.m. By 9, he still wasn't there. By 10, our friends were shifting awkwardly in their seats, making forced conversation. I called him, my voice tight with a forced cheerfulness. "Hey, where are you? We're all waiting." "I'm busy, Amanda." His voice came back, sharp and distracted. "I told you I'll come when I'm done." My voice trembled, the cheerfulness cracking. "Robert, do you remember what today is?" There was a pause. I could hear the clatter of keyboards in the background. Then, a hesitant, "Oh, my birthday." The afterthought, the casual dismissal, was like a physical blow. Tears burned the back of my eyes. "Then where are you?" I whispered, my humiliation echoing in the sudden silence of the room. "At the office," he began, but before he could finish, Chloe's voice cut through the line, clear and bright. "Rob, hurry. The movie premiere is about to start." His voice to her was gentle, placating. "Yeah, just a second." Then, his tone shifted back to me, impatient and cold. "Look, I never celebrate birthdays anyway. It's late. Just go home and sleep." He had the phone on speaker. The entire room had heard. The silence was thick and heavy, charged with pity for me. My tears finally fell, blurring the little icing figures on the cake, until the smiling faces smeared into an unrecognizable mess. Now, in the car, Robert stared straight ahead at the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. He was trembling slightly. "Amanda," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Did you really forget?" I sighed. A long, weary sound. "I'm sorry. Besides, last year you said you never celebrate birthdays anyway." His eyes flickered, a strange, wounded emotion crossing them. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again. I smiled, my voice softening, placating him like one would a child. "If you want, we can celebrate later." With that, I leaned my head back against the seat, closed my eyes, and pretended to drift off to sleep. The car rolled forward in a heavy, suffocating silence. Outside, a light drizzle began to fall. The neon lights of the city streaked past the window, blurring into hazy lines, dragging memories of me and Robert through my mind like frames of a forgotten film. I knew everything was about to end. I had thought about it, but even in my anger, I still couldn't bring myself to choose his birthday to say goodbye. If our beginning was beautiful, then the ending, at least on my part, should be neat and complete, free of unnecessary cruelty. When we got home, the elevator dinged and the doors slid open. I looked down at the gap between the car and the floor and froze for a fraction of a second. The memory of that night flashing through my mind, pain in my ankle, the suitcase, the utter loneliness. "Amanda," Robert's voice called out, anxious, pulling me back to the present. He thought I was unsteady from the alcohol. I forced a smile. "It's nothing. Just thinking about what to make for dinner tomorrow." He unlocked the apartment door. As it swung open, a figure rushed forward from the dimly lit living room, throwing herself into Robert's arms. "Happy birthday, Robert." Chloe's sweet, cloying voice echoed through the narrow hallway. Robert stiffened, his arms half raised in a gesture of shock, his panicked eyes darting immediately to me. "Oh, Amanda, you're here too," Chloe said, her tone layered with feigned surprise, but her body was still pressed against his, her arms wrapped around his neck as if I were the one who was intruding. I gave a faint, unbothered smile. "Come in. Let's celebrate Robert's birthday together." Without looking at their awkward entanglement, I walked straight into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and pulled out ingredients, my movements calm and methodical, as if nothing had happened. "Amanda, let me help you." Robert's voice came from behind me, strained and desperate. but Chloe was already holding on to his arm, her tone coy and demanding. "Robert, don't you want to see the gift I brought for you?" She glanced over his shoulder at me, her smile a small, provocative smirk. I didn't care. I only smiled back lightly, turned my back to them, and continued chopping vegetables. The key to our apartment had been given to Chloe by Robert. For emergencies, he had said. Before, whenever she appeared uninvited, using her key as if this home were also hers, I would feel a surge of helpless anger. But tonight, from the moment she walked in until I set the freshly cooked pasta on the table, I kept that faint, serene smile on my face, as if her presence was the most normal thing in the world. At the table, Chloe sat pressed right up against Robert, her hand brushing his now and then in a series of accidental touches. "Chloe, sit across from me," Robert said flatly, his eyes fixed on my face, trying to gauge my reaction. I just picked up my knife and fork, smiling. "No need to move. Wherever you sit, you still eat. Tonight, it was French dishes again. After some practice in the past few weeks, my skills had improved significantly. Golden, perfectly seared foie gras, a fresh Niçoise salad, and a fragrant beef stew. Chloe took a bite of the foie gras, wrinkling her nose in a display of condescension. "Not bad, Amanda, but last time, Robert said my lasagna was the best he's ever had." Robert cut in coldly, not looking at her. "Yeah, it was good." He speared a piece of foie gras and put it in his mouth, then turned to me. "Why are you so into French food these days?" Before I could answer, Chloe laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Speaking of French food, the best is still at Racine in Paris. Remember, Rob, that year you and I went to Paris? We went to that restaurant." My hand, holding my spoon, trembled slightly. My voice, however, was steady. "You two went to Paris?" Chloe nodded, her eyes soft as she gazed at Robert. "Yes, Paris is so romantic. What couple wouldn't want to hold each other under the Eiffel Tower?" Her words were carefully chosen, designed to inflict maximum damage. At that time, Robert and I. "Stop." Robert cut her off, his voice a low growl, his eyes dark and fixed on me. I smiled faintly, a chillingly calm expression. "So, what did you do then?" I asked, my voice genuinely curious. Chloe smirked, taking my question as an invitation to continue her assault. "We went to the Louvre." Robert even explained all the artworks to me. He's surprisingly knowledgeable. "And the Eiffel Tower, too. We took photos, hugging under it." She laughed brightly, a sound full of triumph. Then she picked up a slice of tomato from her salad and held it up. "Amanda, adding tomato to this salad just ruins it. Don't you know some things, when put in the wrong place, are just unnecessary?" She looked at me, her smile slow and full of insinuation. "Enough." Robert's hand slammed the table, the silverware rattling. His face was hard, his eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen him direct at her. He stood up, pointing to the door. "Get out." Chloe's smile froze. "What?" I said, "Get out," he repeated, his voice dangerously low. Chloe clenched her teeth, her face twisting in a mask of ugly disbelief. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and stormed toward the door, slamming it shut behind her with a force that shook the walls. Robert snatched the bottle of men's cologne from the table's gift stand, hurled it into the kitchen trash can. The glass shattered with a loud, violent crack. I stayed seated, spoon in hand, calmly tasting the stew. "Is it good?" I asked, my voice even. Robert turned to look at me, guilt and desperation shadowing his face. "Amanda, she's always like that. Don't mind her." "Compared to Racine?" I asked without looking up. "Amanda, Chloe Bennett and I went to Paris in high school," he said urgently, the words tumbling out of him. "That was before I even knew you." For the first time in the 6 years I had known him, he spoke her full name in front of me. Should I have been glad? Should I have felt a sense of victory? I felt nothing of the sort. I felt a deep, profound sadness, but it wasn't enough to keep me here anymore. For our 6th anniversary, I had begged him to go to Paris. "Robert, I study art. I've always wanted to see the Louvre." I'd pleaded. He had shrugged. "What's so great about the Louvre? I don't get it." Then the Eiffel Tower. I'd tried. "People say couples who embrace under it will be together for life." He had scoffed, believing silly legends. Nonsense. Only when he saw the anger and disappointment in my face did he grudgingly say, "Fine, I promise we'll go." But at the airport, one phone call from Chloe, who was not feeling well, had been enough to pull him away. "Robert," I said, finally setting down my fork and looking straight at him. With a napkin, I dabbed my lips lightly. "Maybe when love ends, people become calmer, more rational. I used to think you just didn't know how to make a woman happy." My voice was quiet, but it filled the silent room. "But now I know. You did know. It's not that you lacked interest or patience. It's just that you gave it all to someone else." Robert's brow furrowed, panic rising in his eyes. "No, Amanda, it's not like that." I pressed my lips together, forcing a smile. "Then what is it like?" He went silent, taking a step forward as if to explain, to plead. But at that moment, his phone rang again. "Chloe." He looked at the phone, then at me, his face a mask of agony. He knew if he answered it, it was over. But he couldn't help himself. The habit of her was too deeply ingrained. He picked it up. "What?" He snapped into the phone. I didn't need to hear her response. I stood up and walked into the bedroom. A few moments later, I heard the front door slam shut again as he left. Under the pale, unforgiving light of the living room, I looked around the home we had shared for 2 years, the life we had built for 6, and I felt no attachment. I began to pack. It had taken 6 years to build this life, but it took only an hour to erase all traces of myself from it. By 3 a.m., the suitcases were shut, standing by the door like silent, obedient soldiers ready for a new deployment. The apartment was stripped of my presence. The bookshelves were missing my art history volumes. The bathroom counter was bare of my skincare bottles, and the closet held a gaping void where my clothes used to hang. It looked less like a home and more like a hotel room, a transient space that held no memories. I did one last sweep of the room. My eyes fell on the storage closet. Inside, behind a stack of old college textbooks, was the painting. I opened the drawer of my old desk, pulled out the key, and unlocked it. I pulled out the canvas, the colors still as vibrant as the day I'd painted them. Future. The smiling, naive faces of a younger me and a younger Robert stared back. "I hope my future always has you in it," I had whispered on graduation day, my arms thrown around his neck, my smile wide and full of certainty. I had dreamed of painting a companion piece one day, a piece called family, with small children clutching our hands. But we had no future, and we would have no family. A small, wry smile touched my lips. I took the canvas in both hands, the rough texture familiar beneath my fingers. With a single, decisive motion, I tore it in half. The sound of the ripping canvas was loud in the silent apartment. A final, definitive severing. I dropped the 2 ruined pieces into the trash. Tomorrow morning, the garbage truck would come and haul it all away. It was time to meet with my lawyer. 5 days later, I saw Robert again. During those days, I had blocked his number, blocked his social media, and let all communication flow through my lawyer. He had tried desperately to find me, leaving frantic voicemails on my office line, even running to the company building. But I had already completed my handover. Of course, I wasn't there. I was staying in a small, furnished apartment Lisa had helped me find, a temporary sanctuary while I finalized my plans. Today, after finishing the last of my study abroad paperwork, I went to invite Lisa for a proper farewell meal. As I was waiting in the lobby of her office building, I saw him. He was standing near the entrance, looking thin and haggard, his usually impeccable suit rumpled. He was talking to the security guard, probably asking if he had seen me. His back was to me, but I would have known those shoulders anywhere. Lisa came down, saw him, and then saw me. Her eyes widened slightly before a knowing smile touched her lips. "Looks like we'll have to reschedule that lunch," she said quietly, stepping forward and placing a reassuring hand on my arm. She glanced at Robert before looking back at me, her smile full of warmth and encouragement. "When you return from Paris, a celebrated artist, we'll have a proper celebration." At the sound of her voice, Robert turned around. His face froze, his eyes, red-rimmed and exhausted, locked onto mine. For a moment, he looked like a stone statue, his expression blank with stunned disbelief. The word Paris hung in the air between us, a bomb that had just been detonated. I remained calm. I looked straight at him, my voice soft but clear, sincere like a whisper of the wind that holds no anger, only a quiet finality. "Robert, let's talk." We walked out to his car. The silence inside was thick, charged with everything we had never said to each other. I sat in the passenger seat, the same seat where I had feigned sleep just a few nights ago, and stared out the window. Robert didn't start the engine. He just sat there, lighting one cigarette after another, the smoke curling in the cramped space, a gray, hazy curtain between us. It felt like he was trying to choke out the words he couldn't bring himself to say. I don't know how long we sat in that dead, smoky silence. 10 minutes, 20, an eternity. Then, almost at the exact same moment, we both spoke. "Amanda, let's have a child." "Robert, let's get divorced." The words collided in the air, canceling each other out. His face went pale, drained of all color, while my own heart gave a single, violent tremble before steadying again. The decision had been made. The words just had to catch up. I took a deep breath, the smoke stinging my lungs. 3 days from now, I'll be on a plane. His head snapped toward me, his eyes wide with a desperate, dawning horror. "Since when?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Since when did you decide this?" I met his gaze, his once familiar eyes now belonging to a stranger. "Since the night I came back from Paris." He blinked, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He shook his head slowly, as if trying to physically dislodge the thought. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, his voice bitter with betrayal. "So from then on, everything, it was all an act. You had already decided to leave me." I gave a faint, sad smile. I didn't give him an answer, letting his own conclusion hang in the silence. Robert stared at me, his eyes red and raw, a look of unwilling, desperate pleading in them. The cold arrogance he usually wore was gone, stripped away, leaving only a terrified man. "Don't go," he begged, his voice cracking. "Wait until you finish your studies. Wait until you come back. We can have a child. Amanda, a family." His voice grew more frantic, his hand reaching across the console to grip mine, his fingers cold and trembling. But I pressed my lips together, forcing a smile that wouldn't quite come. "That ring wasn't lost, Robert," I said flatly, my voice cutting through his pleas. "I took it off. I threw it into the Seine." He froze, his hand slackening on mine. "The moment I saw you wearing our wedding ring while holding another woman's hand, I threw it away," I said. My voice was quiet, but each word was a carefully aimed dart. I gave a faint, hollow laugh. "Funny, isn't it? How for 6 years I endured so much. I forgave you so many times when you didn't respect our boundaries. Funny how I still held on to these unrealistic illusions about you." I finally looked at him, my eyes clear and dry. "Robert, I know you're tired of me, too. We're finished." "No." He stopped me, his eyes wounded, clinging to the last shred of hope. "Amanda, we can both change. I can change. Paris, yes, I'll go to Paris with you. We can live there. Whatever you want." His voice was full of a pain and regret that might have been genuine, but it no longer mattered. I only smiled softly, shaking my head. "Before, I always wanted to go to Paris with you, but when I went alone, I realized something. Paris was always beautiful. It was beautiful even without you. With that, I slipped off the new platinum wedding ring he had given me. The ring that no longer fit my finger. The ring that represented a future he wanted, but I no longer did. I placed it gently in the center console between us. Then I opened the car door, my voice stripped of all emotion, all anger, all love. Goodbye, Robert. After I got out and shut the door, I took a few steps, then stopped. I turned to look one last time. Robert sat motionless in the driver's seat, his head bowed, staring at the glittering ring I had left behind. His shoulders were slumped in defeat. Then, without looking back again, I walked away. Each step felt lighter than the last, like a dove lifting its wings over the Seine, flying toward the horizon, where peace awaited, where a quiet, new beginning was already blooming in my chest. Freedom, finally here, felt like a gentle river flowing endlessly, carrying away the old, painful memories to make room for new dreams. And in that current, I understood that sometimes, letting go isn't about giving up. It's the only way to embrace yourself, to heal, and to finally live more fully than ever before. 3 days later, I stood by the window of a small apartment in Le Marais, the morning sun slipping through the thin curtains, casting golden streaks across the worn wooden floor. My luggage was unpacked, just a few suitcases holding the essential pieces of my new life, sketchbooks filled with blank pages, a fresh set of paints, and a French notebook where I had already started writing down dreams that no longer bore Robert's shadow. Outside, on the small iron balcony, a pair of doves cooed softly, their gentle sounds blended with the smell of fresh bread wafting up from the bakery. On the cobbled street below, it was like music, a simple, beautiful melody welcoming me into a life unbound. I held a cup of coffee, its warmth spreading through my fingers. I took a sip. The slight bitterness on my tongue was a faint reminder of the days gone by, the days of waiting, of clinging, of hoping for someone else to make me happy. But now, each breath I took was an affirmation. I am free. I am no longer someone's shadow. I am no longer the wife waiting for her husband to return. I am Amanda. I am an artist. Today, I would walk into the Paris Art Academy, where my paintings would tell new stories, where I would learn to paint myself again strong, whole, and defined by no one but me. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and wrote the first line. Today, I begin again, not to forget, but to remember that I have always been enough, even on my own. Stepping out of the apartment, I let the cool Paris breeze brush against my hair. My eyes swept over the old, elegant rooftops, the charming streets branching off into endless possibilities. Each step was light. I smiled, a real, unforced smile, knowing that my future was no longer a painting of someone else's design. It was a blank canvas, bright and free and entirely my own, like the Paris sun that, even on a cloudy day, never truly fades. And in those steps, I understood that sometimes, to find yourself, you must first leave behind everything you once knew, so that new roads can lead you to the place where your heart truly belongs.